What up? So I am going to continue to say this throughout the week, pretty much on every video that I drop. I don't care if you're tired of it. It is what it is. It's my channel, my band. I get to place ads if I want to. The band's new single, "The Great Equalizer" by my band. Excuse me, backwards. You can go check that out. It is live on pretty much all major digital platforms except Apple and iTunes. It's not rolled out for whatever reason. Yeah, they always lag when it comes to that, but it is live on, of course, Spotify and so forth. And I will link it in the pinned comment. You'll be able to see the actual YouTube video with it. You guys have been wonderful, showing a lot of love, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Today I'm going to talk about something that I know is going to ruffle a lot of people's feathers, and of course I don't care. It's all about consistency with me. And I'm not going to talk specifically about the recent ruling, but it kind of influenced me in terms of what I wanted to discuss. Since breaking, the Supreme Court has delivered a historic victory for the LGBTQ, ruling that federal law that bars sex discrimination in employment does apply to the LGBTQ employees. So basically they're adding them the federal law. I believe they're referencing the Civil Rights Act and so forth, which basically bars you from being able to discriminate against people by way of sex when it comes to employment. It just got me thinking, and I've talked about this before many times, actually. I mean, I'm talking way back when I just used to do a lot of political commentary on the channel and everywhere else. When it comes to discrimination, right? And I don't care who needs to hear it. And I don't care who clutches their pearls and faint couch like, oh my God, he said that. You should be free. And it is an absolute requirement when it comes to property rights that you should be able to discriminate against anybody for whatever reason. You should be free to do that. Now, because people are stupid and they conflate having the freedom to do it with authorizing it, or not necessarily authorizing it, more so agreeing with the action. They feel as if everything that, well, from a moral standpoint, it's funny, these be the same guys that be like, separate church from state and all of this stuff. And then they'll pass something like that, like this, which is basically the same concept, where it's the state, and by state I mean in a territorial monopoly on use of force, violence, and ultimate decision making, not like just Texas or something like that. The United States federal government is a state. But effectively, this is the same concept where the state is enforcing people's morality. When it comes to like ownership, legitimate ownership of property, you think about what that means. It means that you have the freedom to exclude whoever you want from it. That's implied in the property right for whatever reason. That's implied. That's what makes it yours. If it wasn't, if you couldn't do that, it wouldn't be yours. There would be some sort of part ownership. You should, as a legitimate property owner, you can exclude whoever you want from it for whatever reason. Just can't use aggression upon someone, but you can't exclude anybody for whatever reason. It's your property. And that does include places of business, if you own the business. Absolutely. But as things get, dare I say, woker, you're going to see a lot more of this where people are wanting to make it illegal to do what they feel are deemed as bad behavior. And that's not how freedom works, guys. Freedom isn't okay, you're only free to do what I want you to do. That's not how it works. We talked about on this channel the case that happened out there in was it Oregon, if I'm not mistaken? And I think the dude got sued again with his lesbian couple, or was it it may have been just a gay couple that were suing the baker because the baker didn't want to make them a gay wedding cake. And it went all the way to like up and down different court systems, right? And I'm sitting here like, huh? Obviously, they could have gone and done something else, but this is what happens, right? This is people think they should be rewarded for this, and that. And it goes back to some of the things that we've even been talking about with this whole movement when it comes to Black Lives Matter. It's like, it's not enough. It's not enough to just not use aggression upon someone. That's not enough. You have to validate, you have to acknowledge, you have to accept and embrace everything that is about them. And if you don't, then there's an issue. So they will absolutely use the state to force you to do it. And that's not right. It's wrong. And whoever needs to hear that, I don't care. You need to hear it because it's right. You should have the freedom, and if it was actual freedom, you should have the freedom to do that. People say, "Oh, well, what about you being black? What if a store didn't want to sell to you because you're black? So what?" Definitely in the age of social media and the interconnectivity, I can be as loudmouth as I want to and tell people not to shop there. And there will be people that are like, I like that Eric July guy. This particular place doesn't is discriminating. I don't support that as a policy. I talked about the Civil Rights Act before and how it was a complete disaster of a something to pass. This concept of, okay, we have to have the state be used to force people to do things. A big misconception about, definitely in the South, a big misconception is that when it comes to like Jim Crow laws and so forth, those were just, people wrongfully assume that the law itself represented every business owner. And I'm talking about laws that made it illegal to have, let's say, fully integrated, dare I say, businesses and places of business. If you did not want to discriminate, you had to by way of law. A good law that you guys can look at that kind of spells this out, or a Supreme Court ruling. Plessy versus Ferguson. I bring this up all the time. Now, Homer Plessy, I believe he wasn't even a full black guy. But you had this separate boxcar act out of Louisiana, in which it made businesses have to separate the colored folk from the white folk in boxcars. And what you may have heard about, you may have heard people mention Plessy versus Ferguson. What they fail to mention is that the boxcar company that was involved in that case was against the law that required them to separate the colored folk from the black folk. The colored folk from the white folk. They hated that law. Why? Because it hurt their pockets. It forced them to have to buy new additional boxcars. And they didn't like that. There's a lot of people out there that say that in the business of making money, it doesn't matter what color you are, even back then, where it was actually absolutely, irrefutably more racist back then than it is now. But they were against that act. But the problem with a lot of the laws that were implemented was that they were forcing people. It was state imposed racism, state endorsed racism, and that is wrong. Just like state forced, dare I say, inclusion, where you're forced to have to include people in your affairs and in their affairs. But people fail to mention that. But that was a big problem with it, and the Civil Rights Act tried to reverse this sort of issue by forcing people into places of businesses or creating this culture where it was. A lot of it had to do with like public property and so forth, or public property. Now, it would have been more free if they were like, okay, the laws that require people to be racist are gone. And this is not anything that I'm saying that is new as far as y'all's beloved Civil Rights Act wasn't all that it's correct. Go listen to what Malcolm X had to say about it. But what that did was create this sort of domino effect where throughout the years, individual states have been passing their own versions of civil rights laws in which it literally makes it illegal for you to discriminate against people in places of employment, in places of sale, depending on where you're at, when it comes to exchanging goods, stuff that you own, which is nonsense. Now, I know this is because I actually have confidence in myself, and I'm proud certainly to be who it is that I am. I don't shy away from that. A lot of people are going to have an issue with this. I would much rather people be openly racist when it comes to their business. What laws like Civil Rights Acts and civil rights laws, what that did was it put people into hiding. So now you don't even know. Would I rather a dude have a sign on the door that says he doesn't want to sell to me? Absolutely. So I know I'm not lining his pockets. And that's what the corny laws basically are. It's forcing them to take my money. I don't want to line the pockets of someone that doesn't like me. Why would I want to do that? Like this, again, going back to the deal that happened out there in Oregon. It's like, that's what that whole entire ordeal is. It's begging for them to accept your money, which is insane to me when you think about it in concept. Like, oh, you don't like me, you're racist? Well, you better take my money. Like, why would you want to help them out? Why would you want to exchange your goods with that person in there? Why would you want to exchange goods with that person? Whether it be your money with that cake or whatever. It's so stupid. But people should be free to discriminate against anybody for any reason. I know there's going to be people that bring up these doomsday. Everybody has there's no shortage of fake approaches, right? When it comes to, they'll come up with these scenarios that are like, well, what if this, and what if this person, this one black person stayed in the county and then everybody in the entire county decided not to sit, like just completely preposterous deals to, as they do with a lot of laws, to try to suggest that that's the reason why it should exist, because of this given scenario that might happen, where some people it may become an inconvenience, a severe inconvenience, or even impossible, which is silly in this day and age in 2020. Where these people can't go to the hospital, or they can't do this because that hospital won't sell to them. So stupid when you consider all of these entities right now that signal pretty much left to right. Like, that's not an actual approach that would be popular. Definitely in this day and age. I think if anything, that it's proven that those laws are outdated. But it's all about consistency when it comes to me and property rights. You should have the freedom to discriminate against anybody. I don't care. If I don't like you and I don't want to sell to you for whatever reason, it does not matter. It doesn't matter whether it be politics. Let's get the conversation out there. Let's get the ideas out there, and let's have a discussion. And if you feel like you come to the conclusion that you don't want to sell to me, fine. I go tell people about that. And that way, people that even are maybe your target demographic say, you know what? Nah, I don't support that in policy, so I'm not going to line your pockets. Fine. Let's put it out there. Let's have the discussion. But y'all need to understand that freedom can be messy at some times, but that's the consistency of it all. You are a blazing or raging hypocrite if you have been lecturing people about separation from church and state. You don't like the idea of church and Christians, let's say, or anybody for that matter, Christians, but in particular, which is people rag on them a lot. Us. You don't like the idea of Christians being able to implement laws based on their personal morality. This is a law based on morality, because you feel as if racism is bad or discrimination is bad, and therefore you want to make it. It's the same exact concept. It's the same exact concept. You just think that you are on the good side of it, but it's still ultimately the same thing, where you're using the state to decide how people must deal with their own property, because you're implementing laws that are predicated upon what your personal morals are, and you think everybody should abide by. There's a lot of things that I enjoy, a lot of things that I like, a lot of things that I don't like and dislike and despise. I'm perfectly open with that. But I think you should be free to create whatever it is that you want to create. The issue is always just going to be acts of aggression. That's when it becomes an issue. Does your racism, let's say, or bigotry manifest itself to the point to where you're wanting to go beat me up? That's when it becomes an issue, or attempt to. That's the issue, right? Or you want to steal from me because I'm black or something like that. Like, it ain't about the because I'm black anyway. It's because you're stealing from me. That's the issue. That's a private property right violation. So I don't want anybody's property rights, including in self-ownership, to be violated under any circumstance. But you're violating the property rights of another if you are trying to decide when someone can't discriminate, which is it's implied in property rights, whether it be in your business, whether it be in your home, whether it be in your good, whether it be in and how you service people. Doesn't matter. That is implied that you have the right to exclude someone. If someone else gets to dictate what you can do with it voluntarily, that's not legitimate ownership. And this is the issue with the state, is that it gets in the way of that. They decide, basically, it's almost like it's like my beef with property tax, right? It's like they basically say they own it and you renting. You only can do what you can with your own property in regards to what they say. And it doesn't matter if it's voluntary. Now, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about voluntary exchange. As long as it's voluntary, it's whatever. I don't have to like it. I don't have to love it. But as long as it's voluntary, you should be free to do that. And that's a conversation that people, for whatever reason, don't want to have. And I think it's because it makes them uncomfortable, because people have conflated the state with morality. Again, it's the same people that have been like separate church and, which is hilarious to me, but they've conflated it too, and they feel as if, okay, we see this as a generally good thing, which you can't, right? You can see discrimination against anybody for sexuality, gender, whatever, race as generally bad things. Absolutely, totally understand. But they feel as if, well, because we think that it's good, or we think this is a preferable position to have, we have to implement this in law, and everybody has to do it. That is wrong. That is wrong. You become the aggressor when you do that. So it's not necessarily, because this law has been existing. I mean, you look at what they're referring to. It's been existing forever, right? Long before I was ever even thought about being a law. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't wrong. And I can say that now. I've been saying it. I've been saying this is something that people have got pissed off at me for the longest about. So yeah, you should be free to discriminate against anybody for any reason. And if you hold the position that, well, now it's law now for it's what it is, you are not only opening the door for a lot of other things, you are delegitimizing your own personal position. Because a lot of y'all would be like, if the church wanted to say that this was illegal, or this, in order for it to be legal, you had to do this, a lot of y'all would be clutching your pearls. And you'd be like, that is wrong, that is wrong, that is wrong. But now the shoe's on the other foot. The pendulum's kind of swing the other way. And now people are, well, it's not now in terms of, it's happening more often. Old laws are being referred to, absolutely. But it's happening more often where you're seeing people think that it should be illegal for people to have ideas that even me, I may find ugly. But that's not how freedom works. Freedom, you're free to be free. And it goes both ways. If you don't like that, what that person is doing, you are under no requirement and should not be forced to buy their goods, their services, or anything like that. On the other side, they shouldn't be forced to sell to you, employ you, like you, accept you, include you in their affairs. This is how freedom works. And no matter what you say, that's just what it is.